Oh, I'm up
You
close.
again.
I'm up my wrinkles.
Please.
I like that little one. I love it. We're probably live. You know that, don't
I
you?
know, right?
Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
We're being professional.
Or try.
Shouldn't ask me.
Katie, you are live.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, you are live. We'll get the other speaker up in just a moment, so go ahead and begin.
Begin what? We can introduce ourselves.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me
There
all?
she is.
Hey.
All right. I was in the background kind of going, can you hear me? Hello. We got it. So we are good to go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. My name is Stacy Overholt, and I am the Director of Clinical Program Success at AvaSure. And we had a few minutes prior to this panel starting to get to know each other. So you are in for a treat. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got some high energy, fun people to talk to you today about early wins with the AvaSure program. Early wins beget long-term successes. And it's really, really, really important to get these early wins in order to have the long-term success. So these programs that we're going to hear from today were handpicked because they are three of programs that have been extremely successful within their first year of this program. And it is because of the hard work of these ladies that you see in front of you and their teams. So let me introduce to you from Baptist Health Medical Center South in Jacksonville, Florida, Lucinda Deputy. Lucinda is the Director of Women's Services, NICU, and Nursing Administration. Mm-hmm. We also have Lisa Rodson. Lisa is from Philadelphia, PA, from Einstein Medical Center. And Lisa is the Director of Nursing Quality and Operational Resources Center. And then we have Suzanne Groff. Suzanne comes all the way from California, live from Valley Presbyterian Hospital. And Suzanne is a clinical nurse specialist in the acute care services department. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
very nice to be here.
You might not be so thankful after we're over with that.
This is going to be fun. Okay. So we're going to start with the obvious question. I would like to hear from each of you. Tell me a little bit about your hospital and your telesitter program, maybe how many devices you have, when you started, how long it's been running, and what your role is with the telesitter program. I'm going to start with Lisa on this one.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Stacy. So our telesitter program is fairly new. We went live in February. So as you mentioned, I am coming from Einstein, Philadelphia. We are a 545 bed academic acute care facility in a very urban area of Philadelphia. I was not part of the initial planning phase. So many people planned for AvaSure to come into our facility with the goal of dropping our one-to-one sitters. And once the planning was up and running, it was kind of tag you're it, it's yours. And I'm like, oh my God, I know nothing about this. However, part of the whole planning phase and meeting with the AvaSure team made everything come together easily and seamlessly. And we only have 10 baby devices, which I think later on we'll talk about how we implemented the program. We have 10 devices, and I will tell you what, this is probably one of the best programs that the hospital has seen. We have a very engaged group. We have the model of rover and telesitter, and the feedback that I get from the floors regarding how the program was implemented has been incredible. We have patients and families that are return customers that actually ask for the cameras. So it's so exciting. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Lucinda, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you for, I'm the Director of Women's Services and NICU and the Nursing Administration. Our hospital is 322 beds. We are part of a large system, local system, nonprofit. We have a, we're just acute care. Then we have a Wolfson's Children's Hospital. And then we have a Baptist Jacksonville. And then we have one in Amelia Island. Nice. And then we have one on the beach. So this is something that we are really excited about doing. And like Lisa said, about sitters, other than counting our sitters when I'm sitting in the house supervisor's office of how many people we needed on it grew very fast. So was really excited when my boss, my nurse exec, Ms. Gunn, decided that I would be the project manager or the project lead on this. So yes, it's been very exciting. And we started August the 5th, 2020. And COVID had a lot to do with it. And we've been growing. Baptist South was the only one. It was kind of like a pilot, and it grew very successful. And I have more to say about that a little bit later.
Great. Thanks, Lucinda. Suzanne, tell us a little bit about your hospital and program.
Great, thank you. Well, Valley Presbyterian Hospital is a standalone community hospital in the middle of Greater Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, which makes us quite unique. Approximately 350 bed licensed hospital facility. We have 10 mobile units, and we still have 10 mobile units. We launched officially, we did a soft launch and then a full launch, and that was October 5th of 2020. So we just passed our 1 year birthday of the program.
Great, great. So let's start with talking about planning. When you're talking about early wins and making those early wins turn into long-term successes, it all starts with the planning. And I'm going to talk to Suzanne and Lucinda specifically about the planning phase. Lisa, I want you to chime in if you can, but I know that you weren't necessarily involved in all of that initial planning before you took over the program. So Suzanne, talk a little bit about your initial planning phase. Who did you have at the table to make sure that you were starting off on the right foot from your organization?
Well, all the credit to my director, Deborah Klein, who had the vision to bring this program to our hospital, and the timing with the pandemic couldn't have been more perfect. But when we started, it was, making sure we had the right nursing leadership in terms of the different service lines being represented, so everyone was aware. IT, of course, and our biomed department. We worked very closely, all three groups, in attending all of those meetings. So, and much credit to AvaSure and the structure that they provided for rollout. So our weekly meetings with Michelle Coulter, I think you're on. I saw your name earlier, and then, those meetings really kept us on point every week because there's a hospital to run, there's a pandemic to deal with, and we're trying to roll out a program. So that structure was very helpful.
Not a lot on your plate there.
No.
Suzanne, was there anybody in hindsight that was not at that table that you think should have been, that would have made any difference?
I don't think so, because I feel that the executive team truly trusted Deborah and I to oversee this to fruition, and that kind of trust and belief in us was was very nice, and hopefully we did deliver.
Great, you did. Lucinda, same question. Talk a little bit about who was at the table in your initial planning phases, and then in hindsight, what could have been different?
So, just like Suzanne, my fearless leader, Elizabeth Gunn, which is our nurse exec, saw the increase in our sitter use. We start March the 5th, we started getting COVID patients in 2020. And the use of the sitters, because there was no family members that could be in the room, which is a key point that we did learn, is that family members are very helpful. When she came to me, we had to work, me and her worked on some information to provide to the executive team. We are a system. We have to go and present this as a system approach. So it's a little bit different when you're a single hospital. When we have 5 hospitals, we have to bring all the information to them. So the nurse execs were very much involved at first, and they finally decided that we would pilot the AvaSure, and then we had a project manager, we had IT, we had a system clinical practice, we had clinical nurses, director of clinical informatics, we had the risk manager involved. It was all the nurse execs, all the directors, and bedside nurses involved in the team. There was so many people on the weekly teams that it was nice to see everybody, because we wanted as a system to make this work. And it was very, very productive. AvaSure saved my life. And I'm not saying that just because I'm on the symposium, is that when I found out that I had this position to set this up, was my first meeting was June the 5th, because we've seen a huge increase in sitters. But the other thing that I really want to say that triggered the rapidness of getting this started is that when Miss Gunn used to make her rounds to all the COVID floors, and she saw sitters sitting in patients' rooms completely with PPE for 12 hours, she said that is not going to happen. And that's when she went to our senior leadership, the nurses, our chief nursing officer for the system, and said, this is what we have to do.
Right.
And so we rapidly started in June the 5th, and we had to do everything: computers, space, hire, and education in 3 months, because our go live date was going to be August the 8th. So
Great.
yeah, so
Great. So Lucinda, it sounds like your team, you were preparing the system for potential expansion and not wanting to do anything unilaterally, but really wanting to involve everybody. And so having that large multidisciplinary team was purposeful for what you were doing as a proof of concept. So that's really interesting. Lisa, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. So although I wasn't part of this, the brainchild of having AvaSure come to Einstein, I was part of all of the meetings. We, similar to Lucinda and Suzanne, had key stakeholders at the meetings, including the bedside nurses. However, in hindsight, I really wish that I would have pulled in my nursing assistants. So my telesitter and my rovers are all nursing assistants. They're care associates that then had additional training to be telesitters. So they are the ones who have been key to this program's success. They have been incredibly instrumental. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, about empowering these people is what makes this program so successful. And I really wish that we would have had them at the table to have them give their opinions and to weigh in, because they really are the eyes and ears of this program. So that is the only thing. The one thing we did differently, and I'm sure it's different than the other two hospitals, we did not have any devices for the nurses to communicate on. So we rolled out AvaSure at the same time as rolling out Vocera to communicate. So it was not just a one new initiative, it was two new initiatives, which in hindsight, I wish we would have staggered the rollout because it was two foreign things at once. And, you know, people that may not be as seasoned adapted a lot more quickly than people that are very seasoned and used to the old ways.
And Lisa, I think that leads us into the another question I wanted to ask you all is, you know, implementing change can be challenging, and you just spoke to the fact that you implemented two changes right at the same time. So I want to hear from everybody. Lisa, go ahead and start. How did you get buy-in from your peers, and how did you help those who were resistant to adopting a program like this or adopting Vocera? What did you use to get them to be less resistant? How did you take care of that within your organization?
Very easily. So the program was brought to Einstein by my chief nurse, who I directly report to. So it was all or nothing for her. She needed to be successful with the CEO and COO. All eyes are on her, right? So I built collaborative relationships with the clinical directors who are on my floor in the Operations Resource Center. And when we had any issues, whether it was lack of Vocera use or compliance or not even wanting the cameras for one reason or another, my telesitters were the ones who were empowered to kind of raise the red flag. I built escalation algorithms for them to first call the charge nurse. So I had an eliminated sheet. Your first line of defense is your charge nurse. If they don't respond, it's the clinical manager. If you get no response, it's the nurse manager, all the way up to the director and the associate chief nurse. So, you know, I think that's what made the change stick. It took a while. We rolled out the program to 2 units only. In hindsight, I wish it was more because the education that the AvaSure team provided was extraordinary. And to replicate that level of education by our own ClinSpecs and educators was a little, you know, subpar, and some things do get lost in translation, and that level of excitement's not there. Kind of like when the AvaSure team's in, there's rah AvaSure. It kind of got lost. However, we are going to have a re-education in December. So I'm hoping to bring up my critical care units as well as roll this out to the emergency department.
Great.
So change, I think, is just the everyday reinforcement, part of the daily safety check-in. We report on number of cameras in use. We go to the floors looking for patients. They call it shopping. And it's now part of everyday language.
Oh, I want to address that a little bit later. I like that shopping. Suzanne, tell me a little bit about in your organization how you implemented this change and how you got buy-in for it.
In 2 words, the road show. Oh wait, that's 3 words.
Okay.
So we used clinical staff. So we did have bedside staff, nursing and nursing assistants as part of our weekly meetings as well. I was remiss to forget that. But what we did is we got a volunteer force, if you will, to do road shows. So we have named our mobile unit Roger. I really don't have a reason why. So we call them Rogers. We thought it'd be more friendly and fun, and it really kind of caught on and made it a fun thing.
Okay.
So they would take Roger around, and we, you know, they signed up for shifts, and it counted towards their clinical ladder program. And I trained them. And then we had a central place where they would check in for each shift. So we did 24/7 around the clock road shows. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks worth. So we had enough staff volunteer, and they went everywhere. So we made sure we jumped in on the respiratory therapy monthly meeting. We jumped in on physical and occupational therapy meetings. We made sure that everybody got to meet Roger. We went through all the units on day shift and night shift. And we had clinical staff showing clinical staff. So it was their peers showing them the unit and giving them handouts and talking to them. And at that same time, they had health stream modules authored by myself that they were, everyone was required to do. So it was all happening at the same time. So what they were learning online, they were actually seeing, and they could see, touch, feel the unit. So, no one would walk in a room and go, what's this thing? Right. So we tried to just, you see a lab person walk down the hall, hey, come to our roadshow. So we just toured around. They were like the Rolling Stones.
That's great.
Tour.
I love that. And I think some of the commonalities I'm hearing, and remember at the beginning, I told everybody that's watching that the 3 of your programs were very successful very early on. And the commonalities that I am hearing is that you had strong leadership, directive, and expectations, and they were clear. The leadership was clear on why you were getting the system, and they were clear on what needed to be done with it. And I also am hearing that you had very strong multidisciplinary teams to help implement your programs and help to plan for them. And then this peer-to-peer idea of doing this mobile roadshow, but using the frontline staff that are going to actually be using it and identifying champions early on. Suzanne, I think that's great. That's great to hear from. And we've heard from other hospitals where that's very successful as well. Lucinda, I want to ask you, I'm going to shift gears to the monitor staff, because I think the monitor staff I know from my experience that the monitor staff can make or break a program. Absolutely. And Lisa alluded to it before, but the communication and the skill level and the attentiveness of the monitor staff is key. So what tools did you use for your monitor staff to help them succeed? And, tell me a little bit about any challenges you might have had with your monitor staff.
Well, thank you. That's a good question. My monitor techs are exactly the same. We use CNAs, and most of them came off the floors that they were monitoring, were our monitors on the med-surg floors. And so we had some barriers at first, even though we did all this education. AvaSure did the video. We did the road trips, but it was the monitor techs that took them around and introduced themselves, and they introduced themselves and they introduced Ava, because that's what we call her. I think she
Ava meet Roger. Roger meet Roger.
Ava 1, 2, 3. But it was that there was a little bit of tension at first when we used Vocera, and the monitor tech said you really need to go in there. Then we started having where, if you know about the Voceras, is that if I'm the monitor tech, they call. If that nurse or CNA is busy, they would put do not disturb, so it would go to the HUC. So at first there was a lot of stat alarms, because they would come to me and say, what should I do? And I said, if there's anything that has to do with patient issue or injuries or unsafe, you're going to have to use the stat alarm. Sure. So the nurses and everybody kind of got frustrated with that a little bit. And so I worked with the directors. We had a meeting with the directors, the nurse managers, as well as all the A&Ms or the charge nurses, because they're the true owners, especially the A&Ms, assistant nurse managers or charge nurses, because they're going to direct the flow of what patients are going to be monitored. They also are the one that's going to get the final from the AvaSure tech. So I've had 2 meetings. I would go to I went to a couple of the med-surg meetings, the FCC, which is our facility coordinating council, which is the same as clinical, and it's a magnet thing. And so the information got out there. What was really nice is once I got the monitor techs comfortable with their watching the screens, I always had 2 for 16 cameras. So every 2 hours, somebody had to rotate to all the floors. Or
Okay.
you go to these 5, and one would stay and watch the cameras, and they would go around, they would introduce themselves to the patients. I guess that's the same as the rovers.
Yep.
And they would talk to the nurses. Is there anybody there that you want on the AvaSure? I have a waiting list, but we'll prioritize. And so they built that relationship with the staff, and a lot more with the A&Ms, because the nurses were just really, really busy. So that was a huge barrier. But now, what's funny is that, they're asking for more and more cameras, the staff is, because they found out that it is very helpful to them.
So you actually used the monitoring staff to bridge the gap and
Right.
improve communications. Lisa, what did you do? I know you have a rover program as well.
We do. So we have 2 telesitters, well, 1 rover, 1 telesitter for the 10 cameras. And that was a must-have for me. The way the program was designed was just have 1 telesitter. And then my concern was what happens if they need to go to the restroom, et cetera. I needed to make sure I have a backup plan, because that monitor needs to be watching constantly. So similar to Lucinda, when the rover does the rounding, they pick up the Vocera devices, because all our staff do not have Vocera even now. So only the people that are part of the telesitter program get Voceras. So they do the hunt and find, they introduce themselves. And part of the way to empower them, I actually had them design the space that they work in. So when I hired them, they were, designing the space. But also what was important is I changed their scrub color. So I put them in burgundy scrubs. So when they go to the unit, they're a presence. Everyone recognizes them.
Wow.
So, I like that idea.
Yeah, it's very different, but different than Lucinda. I still have them go to the floors. So they rotate. I cross-train additional staff. So I always have people doing the telesitter role. So many times they get pulled to the floors to be part of the team and to be on the other end.
Right.
And that's how I've had them give me feedback how to improve the program. So similar to Lucinda again, when they're going to the unit and introducing themselves, they actually say to the patient, "Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm the voice behind that camera."
Right.
I do not approve of them using the commands, the pre-configured commands. One of the things that Sue Dodd actually praises about the program, that 99% of the interactions are verbal interactions. They say, "Good morning, how are you?" They build that relationship. So as they're rounding, they're like, "Hey, I'm that crazy voice behind the camera. Don't be freaked out." And as they're rounding the room, my expectation is that the room looks good. They are to change the patient if they're soiled. They are to put them in the falls precaution gear per protocol, if not. And since I am the director of nursing quality, I have them monitor quality initiatives. So they really help out with pressure injury prevention protocol compliance, CAUTI compliance. They've caught, Foley bags accidentally left on the mattress that they then put into appropriate place. So I've multi-purposed them and really empowered them to be beyond excellent telesitters.
And I can imagine that it might be something that they see while they're telesitting, and they can't wait to get up and get out into that room to fix that issue.
So it's interesting, Stacey, it's a pro and a con, and I'm not going to lie to you. So the one thing, and I'm so embarrassed to say this live, that has been creeping up. One of my babies, and I mentioned this to Lucinda early on, is pressure injury prevention. We've decreased, based on our initiatives, by 80 to 90% our pressure injury rates.
Amazing.
What are we seeing on camera? Diapers. That is a huge no. Oh my goodness, that's a huge no. So now the staff, they actually put a little ban on the cameras. They're like, who is telling on us? Who is telling on us?
Oh,
so that was something that I had to overcome. It was another barrier to help staff understand we're all on the same team, and patient safety is an imperative. All aspects of patient safety.
Wow. Suzanne, I want to pivot just a little bit. I know that you do a great job with your monitor staff as well, and probably can speak to a lot of these things. But I also know that you've had to do some things with your clinical team in order to improve their response and improve how they use the system. Talk a little bit about what tools you are using with the clinical bedside staff in order to continue to engage them and ensure that they know that they're doing good quality work with the telesitters?
Well, I will say we don't have rovers. We don't have the resources for that. That sounds wonderful. Certainly a good goal. I like hearing about new ideas. Our staff wasn't as excited in the beginning. I felt like it was a bit of a hard sell in the beginning to get them to understand the benefits of the telesitter. So that took a little bit of time. Seeing is believing. And then, there's a thing with hospitals, and I know we all suffer this, the alarm fatigue, right? Well documented. And, oh, here's a new alarm. Now it's very unique. It definitely doesn't sound like anything else, which I super appreciate. But then it's the urgency behind that, right? And the confusion between a bed alarm and a stat alarm from telesitter, and when do you use both? So it was a lot of rounding, a lot of conversations. I speak at every staff meeting. I'm over 7 inpatient units, so I speak at every staff meeting when they're held to try to reinforce all of this. But, friendly competition is always fun, and it really produces results. We started doing a stat alarm response time contest. And just our very first one, just as an example, one of our telemetry units, their stat response time was over 30 seconds, which of course was not acceptable. And this was early on. And after a 1-month contest that resulted in a pizza party, they did not win that first contest, but they went down to 12 seconds. Response time.
Brilliant.
So all of a sudden there was true ownership, right? It started to matter. And, once we started sharing with the staff, the information from AvaSure about, the threshold for adverse events, and we need to be below that threshold. And we have by and large averaged to be below that threshold every month thereafter. So it was just bringing it to light in a way that would get their attention. Because I think we can all agree the pandemic just exacerbated trying to get staff's attention for really anything.
Yeah.
Having staff.
Or having staff.
Very, very worried about a lot of things besides their day-to-day work, and it became an even bigger challenge. So making it fun really helped.
Good.
It really helped. So
That's
that
great.
was a huge win.
Yeah, and it sounds like, and just, based on some of the notes I've read and some of the feedback I've received from our clinical staff, it sounds like even though there were challenges at the beginning, the effort that you put into it has overcome those challenges, and now you're at almost 100% utilization with your system every day. So I think that that's really neat. That's another commonality that I'm hearing from all of you. With the buy-in from staff and the training of the monitor staff is effort. Nothing is successful without some time and effort put into it. I said that yesterday in my presentation, and it is one of my soapboxes. This is a technology you're bringing into your hospital. And while it is a great time saver, and while it's very efficient, you need to put the time and effort into making it that way. And then hopefully it'll become more routine. One of the questions, and all 3 of you have mentioned this, and all 3 of your hospitals pretty much went live during COVID with this system. So how did that impact? How did you do that during COVID? How did you use the program differently at first, or did bringing telesitting in actually give staff some relief during COVID? I'll have you start.
Absolutely.
Lucinda, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't think COVID was so devastating to all of us, but I think that the biggest impact was on those frontline workers, and there was a lot of staff leaving, going traveling, or just the patients itself, and the number of COVID patients that we at Baptist South, at Baptist Health had. The thing that really impacted the virtual the video is that if they didn't have a sitter on the floor to sit with a patient, they were pulling the staff off the floor to go sit. So if you had 2 CNAs for 24 beds, that meant it left one. And it was, when we got the videos, it allowed those CNAs to go back on the floor and do bedside care. And I think that was a huge impact. And then eventually we all saw the fluctuation of staffing. I mean, the COVID a really hard effect on our healthcare workers, but I think that we allowed them to have a little more breathing room because we took away the those video monitors. 100% of our video monitors for during this COVID. Very rarely did we have less than 2 or 3 out, and we had 16. So
did you have this? I'm sorry, Lucinda. Did you have the same experience, Lisa, at Einstein with that?
Absolutely. Staffing was an incredible challenge, and resources were incredibly limited. And on a daily basis, we can have 24 to 26 sitters for both behavioral and safety mixed together. So similar to Lucinda, if there are not enough sitters coming in for the shift, people were being pulled off the unit, leaving no ancillary staff. So it was incredibly well received. The other thing that was really important during COVID was we ran out of negative pressure rooms. And we have to keep in mind, we went later in the COVID pandemic. We went live February 2021. So we're still baby with this, right? However, we still saw a pretty consistent number of COVID patients. Even today, we have a pretty large number. So running out of these negative pressure rooms, we're putting patients in rooms with doors closed. And we're in a pretty old hospital in Philadelphia, so we don't have windows. We can't see what's going on inside. So prior to AvaSure, we were using baby monitors. Again, it is not optimal at all and embarrassing. However, these cameras gave us a lens into what was happening with the patient. So we really focused on the patients that came in with a fall to really be the priority of utilizing these cameras to prevent an additional fall. And it was very successful.
Great. What about you, Suzanne? Same types of things, or?
I echo Lisa and Lucinda's issues 100%. Going live October 5th, we didn't know how bad our winter surge was going to be. It made the rest of 2020 pale in comparison. December, January was horrific for us in all ways. But what was really elucidating in December, January, we had this very high influx of the high flow patients on med-surg, right? I'm not in critical care. And so you have all these patients on high flow, very hypoxic, behind closed doors, as Lisa pointed out, which is always a negative, but had to be done. But the telesitter became much more than just a fall risk. It was life-saving because hypoxic patients were so delirious, they were just pulling off their oxygen thinking, I just got to get up and go to the bathroom. And they didn't have enough capacity to even make it a few feet to the bathroom and would pass out before they got to the bathroom. This happened. It happened sadly several times. So it became a life-saving piece of equipment, quite literally.
Totally agree with you, Suzanne.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I hear that the topic of this panel is success and these early wins, and you happen to be talking about a lot of these things that the telesitter is helping you to do, that is bettering the safety of your patients and bettering the satisfaction of your staff. And we're getting close to the time where we have to close this discussion, and I think we're really having a good conversation about things that people want to hear. There's not a lot of Q&A, and I'm happy about that right now because I have a bunch more questions, but I'm going to focus on a couple here. I think what all you have said about success I wanted to talk with you about benchmarks and how you're measuring success. That's data. That stuff, it's important. And it's measuring your sitter rates, and it's measuring your fall rates, and it's measuring your program metrics. But I think what you have shared with us is even more important, because it's the direct impact for the entire hospital facility that this is making, and why your programs are so successful and why your staff has bought into it. So instead of focusing on that question, I want to hear about the future and your future plans for your hospitals. I know Lucinda's eager to talk about her future plans.
But I'll wait.
We'll leave you for last, Lucinda. Suzanne, I know that there has been some conversation about potentially expanding at Valley, and I wondered if there's any plans on it, and if you did, what would that look like? Talk about use cases that you might not be using, or the need for additional devices, or maybe the any ideas you've had on how you could use the system differently.
Well, yes, there are conversations about getting more units. I don't know exactly where that conversation is currently on the executive level, but I know that we have talked periodically about the hardwired monitors in certain units in certain areas. That's a discussion. And much like the previous session when you're talking about suicidal patients, the gross increase in this country of suicidal patients and drug abuse patients, violence, all of these things are going up in acute care hospitals in this country. So the idea of utilizing more units, I mean, it just makes sense. So I think our conversations are looking towards the hardwired monitors in certain areas, but of course that's a whole structural, Cal OSHA regulatory construction thing, right? We get all HGTV at that point. So that's a much bigger discussion, but I think that's where we're looking.
What about you, Lisa?
So we've put a proposal together to get 10 additional cameras. So that's going to require just having one more telesitter. So it's 4.1 additional FTs, which I already have trained. So we are actively in the process of expanding the program. We have a sister hospital, Elkins Park, and at Montgomery. Both are suburban hospitals. They also have the program with a different model, not utilizing a rover, but having someone based on a unit, on a clinical unit, specifically brain injury. However, the program has been so successful at the Philadelphia campus that I am really excited and anxious to move it out to our emergency department, as well as to our ICUs.
Great. Wow, that's fantastic. And Lucinda, how about you?
I know I'm being, so our program as a system has become very successful. And so we just signed a contract to get a total of 52 cameras. We are in the process, hopefully by December, we're going to have a hub and spoke, because we got our two Baptist, Nassau and Baptist Beaches have been wanting this since COVID. And so we're going to start off with them, with the near future of the Wolfson's Children's Hospital is monitoring their children for the behavior health. And then the behavior health for adults is as well looking and focusing on getting more cameras. So we are growing really fast. We've got a beautiful place for our the video tags, but I'm in the process of hiring 21 FTEs.
Wow.
Maybe it's 12. I got it. Anyway, it's a lot.
More people.
And I don't have it right in front of me this moment, but what we did, because this is a system approach, instead of just hiring from Baptist South, we put out an invite to all the hospitals to hire anybody that wants to come and work at this video bank. And it's very exciting with future plans for the CMU and other things. But never have I imagined that in just over a year that we're going to have 52 cameras.
Wow.
And it's very exciting. So I know that we got IS working and we got clinical practice. I mean, everybody again working toward this expansion into a hub and spoke. And now, and I have to give Miss Elizabeth Gunn credit for this, because this is something that she's always wanted. And so we are really, it's, and I'm talking to Lisa and to Suzanne, when you have your nurse exec or your CNO, and this is really passionate to them, you want to do good for them.
Thanks, Lucinda. That's great. We are actually over time, but there are still people tuning in, and I know we're in a break session. I did get one question, so I'm going to go ahead, whether I'm supposed to or not. I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. And for those that need to leave to take a break, fine. But I think hopefully the three of you are okay with going on a little bit longer.
Sure.
But I said earlier, all of the success you're talking about is just so important, but actually somebody does want to hear about the data. So anyway, if you could touch base on the program metrics from Orna, and also, or our online database if you use it, and then also any outcomes you're measuring from your hospital, and how do you use those data points to help support your program success? I'll start with Suzanne on that one.
Well, we mostly are looking at three things right now. Our daily utilization. We're constantly using stat alarm response time for bedside staff engagement, and then looking at the sitter hours. So in Q4, our sitter hours averaged 399. Q2 of this year, 253.
Wow.
So there's some hard numbers for you. Our utilization, we're always looking to stay at 90% or above. That's always the goal. And the lovely Jennifer Williams is always reminding us in our touch base meetings, which we need. It's so good. The last 3 months, we've averaged around 75, 78%. So we need to work on that. But it's something that always shows us where we need to put our efforts, right?
Great.
So those are the things we're looking at.
Great. Lisa, how about you?
So we focus, similar to Suzanne, on stat alarm times, device utilization, as well as safety hours. So our cameras are only for our safety one-to-one, so I can't really give you hours. However, for the safety one-to-ones, we've been able since February to reduce that by 65%. So that's huge. Behavioral health, again, we haven't made any headway. Hopefully maybe down the line we can explore that. The other thing we measure our program on is good catches. And unfortunately, I don't know if Sue Dodd is on here, but she told me from the day she met me, I will ask you good catches every single time. And that's stories that we're able to share with nursing, administration, executives, our COO when she comes in to see us. So we've seen contraband being passed along from visitor to patient. We've caught patients with knives underneath the blankets. We actually caught a patient that was arresting, and it was my telesitter team that called the code blue and the RT response. So, I mean, I think that although numbers are very, very important, I think the good catches are what really seals the deal with patient safety and quality metrics.
And do you share those good catches with your frontline staff?
Of course. And that's where the whole Orna report is. When you have a unit of the month, I think it's so important to give them that feedback. And I send that out to all the units that participate. What are their utilization hours? What is their response, stat response time? And we're blessed that our stat response time is around 3.8 seconds. So anything that really is a variant from that, we do root causes as to what happened, and what can we do in the future to prevent that from happening again.
Great. Lucinda, we're going to end pretty soon here, but why don't you tell us really quickly what you do to measure success and how you present that and share it.
So there's two. I do look at the financial part, which senior leadership, they do like that. And in a year's time, and I'm just going to mention this once because I do monitor other stuff, is we've saved 573 FTEs by
Wow.
using these. And this is over a year. You don't want to know but it's good enough. It's good enough to give me 52 more cameras. So, but we do the stat alarms to the floors. We also we don't do the divide. We know that we use 80%, but I really don't use that as one of my metrics. But I like it, and my safety monitor techs, they know it and they let me know. But falls is a big thing. So I go to the system falls, and as well as I go to Baptist South falls and explain to let them know. Well, over the year up till now, we've only had 3 falls on the telly.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's probably very nice for the frontline staff to hear.
Yes, and
Correct.
they and not only that, and I'm just going to say 2 is they saved a nurse because of a violent patient had this nurse up against the wall with his hands around her neck. And we save a lot of lines, because that's one of the things that they have to tell us is, do they have a central line, a Foley, so they know, the techs know that that's what they're looking for too. So, and that's a huge thing.
That is huge. That's huge. Well, everyone, thank you for those that hung in. As we went over a little bit, I think this discussion was really important, and there you have it. These are our our early successes, great successful programs, a lot of future ahead of you with your programs. Thank you for sharing all of your successes with us. And we so appreciate your participation. For those of you who are going to join the last general session, be sure to go and click into the day 2 general session button at the top, and that will be starting in 7 minutes. So we took up half the break, but you know what? It was worth it. A lot of people hung in on the conversation.
Oh, good.
That's awesome.
And we really appreciate it. You are all so much fun. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
I've just made some new best friends. Thank you, guys. This is great.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.